to join in and to ask questions of the presenter. But for right now, again, I'm Mary O'Malley. I'm a member of the steering committee of We Raise New Jersey, and I'm also CEO of a little organization called Good Doers and Scribes. I'm very proud to be a part of the steering committee of We Raise New Jersey. We're a broad coalition of education stakeholders representing, among others, families, educators, education administrators, businesses, and higher education, who all are dedicated to the mission and vision that all, emphasis on all, New Jersey students graduate from high school ready to live, learn, and earn. For the past year, we've been engaged in work to create a new vision of education that's responsive to the demands of the 21st century and unprecedented but precedent-setting events like the COVID pandemic. We've been fortunate to receive funding from the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Foundation for this work and have involved a broad range of stakeholders that you'll hear a little bit about both in this education and the other three components of what it is that we're undertaking this year. Today, we're here to talk about some very important research that we undertook to get views of parents on the topic of COVID and current education. And we've worked with Learning Heroes and have been guided by a number of the state's leading parent and family involvement organizations. What I'd like to introduce now, Rosa Chera, who's past president of New Jersey PTA, who helped lead this work. Rose?
Hello, everyone. So on behalf of New Jersey PTA, I also would like to welcome you to this webinar where we'll be exploring New Jersey parent and guardian mindsets about education during this time. We definitely, I think Mary did it already, but we are very grateful at New Jersey PTA to not only be able to partner with We Raise New Jersey and Learning Heroes on this project, but also want to recognize the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Foundation for their generous support of this work, which would not have been possible without. As a parent organization, we are proud to do this work and always are out there to bring resources to our parents and members and hope that this is something that can continue through this work. At this time, I'll turn it over to Erica Gray of Learning Heroes. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. And just to cover a few logistical things, I was going to mention that this will be recorded, but we all heard that loud announcement earlier on. So we will be recording this just so that we can share it out in case there are any advocates who were not able to join us in real time today so that they can see the presentation. And then just one other note, if you have questions while we're going through this, feel free to type them in the chat box. We'll have some time at the end to discuss questions where you can unmute yourself or also type them in, but also feel free to type them in as we're going through. So I am actually going to hand the baton over to Bib Hubbard now, who is the founder of Learning Heroes, to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you to all of you for joining us here today for this incredible research. And it has really informed the work that we've done at Learning Heroes and have been thrilled to partner with We Raise New Jersey and the New Jersey PTA, who's been a longtime partner. So really excited to dig in, but also want to acknowledge Jocelyn Pickford, who has been a critical member of this team in pulling all of this work together in just the most amazing way. So just really thrilled to learn alongside with all of you and hear your questions and see where this all goes, but really thrilled to be a part of this incredible project. So with that, I'll turn it back to Erica. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bib. So we also have on the line the team from Edge Research, who were actually the masterminds that conducted all of this research. So Adam and Lydia, would you guys like to take it away?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, I'm Adam Burns from Edge Research. Very, very happy to have been able to collaborate with the team on this really robust and important effort. And Lydia and I are very excited to dive into the data, and certainly our colleagues were very happy to be able to work on this as well. You see on your screen the agenda for the conversation today. I am going to jump on to the methodology, and we can come back to more information about Learning Heroes and background on this work in the interest of time. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And I mentioned this was a robust research effort. It included both qualitative research or focus groups, as well as a survey, a representative survey of parents and guardians in New Jersey. A couple important things to note on this slide. One is the timing. We're looking at focus groups that took place in mid-June, with the survey taking place in late July, early August. So reporting on what was going on at that time. You can see the mix of participants in our focus groups. And as well, you'll notice that with the survey, we conducted oversamples, which basically means extra interviews so that we could make sure that we could look at important subgroups such as Hispanic parents or African-American parents with more statistical validity, which we were able to do so. We also conducted the survey online in both English and Spanish. And as we go through the data here, you'll see some numbers in blue and red. That refers to items that are statistically higher or lower than other audiences on that slide. And then also you'll notice some yellow text here and there, where we're going to show you some results from a recent national survey of parents that Learning Heroes conducted in April. So we'll show some interesting differences there with what was going on with parents in New Jersey. A lot to get through. So before we get into the specifics, let's share some of the key insights from the report, and then we'll dive into the detailed findings. So first, it's important to understand that parents reported in the spring really higher parent engagement in their children's education really than ever before. And even though they had this increased engagement, it didn't necessarily, and actually did not translate into a more accurate picture of their child's achievement, that parents had and kept an inflated sense of how well their children were doing in school. Also important to keep in mind, of course, in that environment, especially in the spring, there was a sea of worries, as you see on the screen, and concerns, but not surprisingly, safety rises to the top. Academics is a concern, but it's a little bit less so, and partially, we believe, because parents also reported that their kids actually did pretty well academically in their definition in the spring, and we'll get to that, of course, a little bit later on. And then a third insight to keep in mind is that yes, parents absolutely seem to give schools the benefit of the doubt with such a rush to remote schooling or distance learning in the spring, but expectations would absolutely be higher in the fall, and we'll get to a lot about that as well. So with that, let's dig into the data. We're going to start with the parent mindsets, what they bring to the table, at least what they brought to the table when conducting this research in the summer. And a good place to start are those worries that I mentioned earlier. And as you see on the screen here, we asked the question, given the current coronavirus situation, how are you feeling as a parent? And we see a lot of mixed emotions, mixed feelings. We see over 7 in 10 saying they feel hopeful, they feel grateful. We also see frustration. We also see anxiety. And when we asked, so what's the number one? What's the number one feeling that you have across all key subgroups and overall? It was that anxiety, that feeling worried. It was the most prominent response. Now, there were some interesting differences across race and ethnicity, where we have over 8 in 10 African-American parents saying they felt hopeful, but also 6 in 10 saying they felt overwhelmed. We look at white parents, 73% anxious and worried, 64% feeling frustrated, so interesting differences there. But there are also some important differences to note compared to that national survey that I mentioned earlier, where there were fewer feelings of optimism, fewer feelings of safety. Some of that could be a New Jersey difference versus national difference, but also I think there's a time element here, as we remember that national survey took place more in the spring than in the summer, so that could have a part of it as well. So we have this initial backdrop of worry. We also asked about concerns specifically, and what are top concerns of a list that you see here on the screen. And these percentages refer to what we call the top 2 box, or the top 2 responses, parents indicating they worry a lot or some about these things. And as you see, 76% of New Jersey parents indicate they were concerned about safety. Just past that, or just beneath that, I should say, we have 69% also sharing concern about someone in their family getting the coronavirus. if we look at this top tier, very interesting to see, we have that safety at the top, but then just below that, we have, the social interactions, we have the social and emotional well-being, and then we get into some of the education issues. Also interesting to note, all of these concerns are above and beyond concerns about being able to make ends meet, paying for bills, having food to feed family, that type of thing. And we do see some interesting sub differences here and there, but not too many. It was relatively consistent overall when it comes to this item on the survey. Now, let's look a little bit more into education, since that's certainly a primary topic here today. And I'll start with what we call the disconnect. It's something that Learning Heroes really unearthed in their national surveys over the past few years. It's something that we've been monitoring over time, and it's this idea of parents having a more inflated sense of how well their kids are doing compared to reality. And you can see it quite clearly here. The blue bars representing parents from New Jersey, the yellow bars national. So we see results very consistent overall. Or if you look in math and reading, we have 93% of New Jersey parents saying that their children are at or above a grade level in math, 91% with similar perspectives in reading. These numbers, again, very consistent across, not just compared to the national, but across race and ethnicity, but is also very different from reality. In that oval, the blue oval, the bottom of the screen, you see results from the New Jersey fourth grade NAEP test. We're looking at more at 48% proficient or advanced, 42% proficient or advanced. So this disconnect is certainly alive and well, not just nationwide, but in New Jersey specifically. One element that might be a factor or that can lead to this disconnect is also this idea that 89% of New Jersey parents also indicated that their child is getting mostly B's or better on their report card. So important to keep that in mind, that when parents are looking at this report card that they receive from their kids, they're seeing mostly B's, A's and B's, or A's. With this backdrop, it's also important to take a look at the aspirations that these parents and guardians present for their children. And these aspirations are high, very, very high, in terms of how important is it to them that their child goes to college. 81% of New Jersey parents saying it's absolutely essential or very important, that top 2 box response. Again, very, very high. And then also that translates into a high level of confidence that their child's going to be successful, not just for entrance in, but they'll succeed in college upon graduation from high school. We have 3 and 4 New Jersey parents also feeling that way, with 75% extremely or very confident. Now, given the backdrop of what happened at the end of the last school year, we looked at confidence in 2 other ways. One is this idea of how confident are you that you have a clear understanding of how well your child is achieving academically. And these parents think, hey, I've got a very clear picture. 82% saying that they are extremely or very confident in that clear understanding. That extreme confidence, a little bit less so among white parents, but still overall, as you look at that top 2 box, still across race and ethnicity, very, very high. This 82% exactly matches what we hear from parents nationwide, so very consistent with what we found in New Jersey. But let's bring the focus to confidence as it relates to parents and their kids coming off of the spring and going into the school year this fall. And we see that they're a little bit less confident here. Now, I don't want to overstate that. We still have over 7 in 10 saying that they're extremely or very confident that their child will be well prepared for the next grade level when school resumes this fall, but it certainly is not at that high level, that 82% that we saw on the previous slide. And over 1 in 5, 22% of parents in New Jersey saying they're somewhat confident. So yes, confidence is high, but not necessarily as high as we think about coming into this school year. So I think with this confidence that parents presented, the natural next question is, so where does this confidence come from? Well, let's take a look at what parents reported to us, parents and guardians reported to us as what happened in the spring. And what you see on the slide in front of you are some snippets from the focus groups that we conducted. We heard a lot of mixed reviews from parents in terms of what it was like during remote schooling or distance learning in the spring. And two quotes I just want to mention. Well, some thought that it went quite well. Others did note that struggle to make sure she was getting everything she needed and keep up with their work. She had 3 kids. A lot of teachers did the best they could, but it was tough juggling what was going on with those 3 kids. And then another parent, if it had been 1 kid, it might have been all right. I have 2 in middle school. I don't think my kids having to keep themselves motivated work that well. I'm sure you all have your own experiences that you could share and add to this screen for sure, but a lot of different perspectives in terms of what it was like for these parents and some of their struggles, but also their successes in the spring. But let's look at the quant data. Let's see what the quantitative data tell us about what happened in the spring. And we do note that there were some mixed reviews, but a sense that overall went better than expected. Almost 6 in 10, 59% of New Jersey parents agree in this top 2 box agreement, vary or somewhat agree that their child's remote schooling went better than they expected, with African American parents and Hispanic parents more likely to feel that way than white parents. But we also see, when asked a bit of a different way, was supporting your child. What was that like? And we have over half of parents also saying, you know what? Supporting my child while doing their remote schoolwork was also harder than they expected it to be, with the Hispanic parents more likely to feel that way than their counterparts. So they thought it went better than they thought it was going to, but it certainly was not easy by any stretch. When it comes to actual work done, and we asked parents, what was it like in terms of whether your child was able to participate and keep up with what was going on in terms of the distance learning activities provided by their school. And 6 in 10 said, you know what? They were able to complete everything that they were supposed to. They're able to do everything all the time. Now, I think that's an interesting result, but what's also interesting, if you look at that from the other side, we have 4 in 10 parents and guardians in New Jersey saying, my child was not able to keep up all the time. So 4 in 10 saying that their child was not able to get everything done. And when we look by subgroups, it goes even higher, where we have 45%, as you see in the oval at the top, of Black parents in New Jersey indicating that their child was not able to get everything done. So what were some of the obstacles? What were the things that kept these kids from getting everything done, or have made it hard for these parents to help these kids? And what we see here, it's the reasons that people shared for not participating, for their child not participating much or at all. So we're looking at a smaller sample size here, but the results are still pretty illustrative. Some indicated that new content wasn't explained well enough, there were technology issues, or the materials were not helpful. So a lot of different reasons that parents share, but this is where we see some of the bumps with a bit more specificity in terms of what made things more complex during distance learning in the spring. So we also wanted to dig into how parents thought learning went. And we explored that a bit in 3 different ways. And we looked at it 3 different ways because it's actually kind of a complex topic. We want to make sure that we were getting some consistent results. And it turns out New Jersey parents were extremely consistent, regardless of how we asked these questions. So first question we asked was, taking into account your child's remote learning at the end of the last school year, where do you think your child is academically going into the upcoming school year this fall, the school year that just started? And we have 4 in 10 saying, you know what? They're right where they should be, just as if the school year had ended normally. But that also means that we have a majority who say, you know what, they're not quite there. And most indicator, or plurality, 48% said that they were a little behind where they would be in a normal year. So we see a little bit of some differing perspectives among New Jersey parents on this topic. This split continues, or you'll be able to see it probably even more directly when you look at this question. Which of the following best describes what learning material or content your child's teacher covered while school was remote? So we have less than 1 in 5, 18% saying all the content that would have learned in a normal year. So most New Jersey parents are saying, okay, we know that the content wasn't exactly what would have been given during a normal year. But if we add all the content with most of what they would have learned in a normal year, we have about half, just under half, 48% of New Jersey parents falling into that category. But that also means that just around half, just over half, are saying that it was some new material or not much or any new material was covered. And to further show this split among New Jersey parents, we asked agreement or disagreement with the statement. My child learned just as much at home as they would have if school was in person. We have 41% agreeing, 41% disagreeing, and 18% right in the middle. So we do see quite varied perspectives in terms of how much content was really delivered this last spring. But let's move from content delivery to grading, since we were talking about these expectations. And we note here that 68% of New Jersey parents agree with this statement. Compared to the regular school year, during remote schooling, my child's grades were based more on whether they completed assignments than how much they understood the content. So completion more than mastery. And we heard a lot of parents talk about this in our focus groups. If you look at the quote at the top, hard to tell about academic process. The last couple of months, I don't think my child was learning anything he hadn't already learned. He feels like he ended the year in March. In the last couple of months, he's been skating by, has not made much progress. If he showed up and did the work they asked him to do, they gave him an A. So here we see thoughts of more completion than mastery, but still getting the A on that report card. And more on that as we move into what parents think about and how they present this fall. The survey also explored technological barriers and the digital divide, of course, an issue of key importance. And we see New Jersey parents and guardians reporting almost an even split across access to or being able to use technology and or Wi-Fi. So we're thinking about the device as well as access to Wi-Fi. And we see 32% saying they already own the tech they needed, 35% saying that they missed a device or the internet, and a third saying that to some extent they used school-provided device or Wi-Fi access. What's also important to keep in mind here is we do see some important subgroup differences where we have almost 4 in 10 African American and Hispanic parents in New Jersey indicated they were missing some sort of device compared to only 3 in 10 of white parents indicating that they were missing something in that regard. Now, we did want to look at this issue of digital divide and the challenges associated with the digital divide in a bit of a different way. And if we take a look at this slide, it asks which of the following did your child have access to whenever needed for schoolwork during remote schooling? And we have 7 in 10 saying, okay, consistent, reliable access to the internet, a computer or tablet they already had in the household. But I'd like us to focus on columns 2 and 4 in this slide specifically, where we have 17% saying that they were relying on a hotspot provided by the school or district, and then 1 in 3, 34% saying they were relying on that device provided by the school or district. But we took this question a bit further and asked, well, what would you rely on and what would you expect to get this fall, And 2/3 of parents who were looking at that Wi-Fi hotspot expected that it would again be provided this fall. And 93% of those who received that device, that tablet provided by the school or district, also expected that it would be provided at the beginning of the school year this year. Now we have one more data point to help set the stage for parents presenting in the fall. And this was, in my opinion, one of the more interesting topics, especially from our qualitative research when we heard New Jersey parents talk about this, but certainly just as compelling from the quantitative side. Agree or disagree with the statement, all students had remote schooling last spring, so they will mostly be in the same place academically going into the next school year. So this idea of we're all kind of in the same boat. A majority of parents and guardians in New Jersey, 58% agree with that statement, extremely consistent across race and ethnicity as well. With all of that backdrop of what happened in the spring and then the parent mindset when it comes to education and their child's achievement, let me pass it over to my colleague Lydia, who will share some key insights regarding what New Jersey parents and guardians reported about their engagement for this school year.
Parents' experiences in the spring with remote learning left them feeling even more connected with their child's day-to-day education than ever before. 7 in 10 agree with that statement. That's especially true of Hispanic parents. A majority of parents also say that they now have a better understanding of what their child is expected to learn at their grade level. And in our parent research over the years, we've consistently heard that parents' own observations of their child are a large part of understanding what their child's learning and how their child's doing in school. With remote learning, they were able to observe their child more, connect more with their education, so they feel they have a better sense of this now than ever before. Along with a better understanding of what their child should be learning, parents have higher expectations for schools going into this year. The vast majority say that it's very important, if not absolutely essential, that they have online access to assignments and materials, data on how their child is doing this fall, tools to help them explain content at home, and assuming remote learning in the fall, which of course we know is what many districts are in fact doing now, they want live video classes, things that are structured more like the in-person classroom instruction. And with this increased engagement, parents are activated to show up differently this fall. So they plan to engage more with their child on assignments, and they're motivated to get an even better understanding of what their child should be learning this year and where their child is academically. And parents of color are especially likely to look to their schools and to their teachers for more communication and better relationships this school year. All of these numbers, except for lowering academic expectations, are higher, significantly higher than we saw in the national survey. But keep in mind that there was a difference in the timing of these surveys. So the national survey happened in April, which was early on during remote schooling, while many schools were still figuring out how to do that. And when many parents probably thought that we might be back to a more normal in-person school in the fall. So they were thinking about the school year in that context, while the New Jersey survey fielded during the summer. So those parents had gone through the full experience of remote learning in the spring, and they were more likely thinking of some sort of remote or hybrid schooling when they were thinking to the fall in this question. So the timing difference may explain some of the increase we see, rather than it being a national versus New Jersey location difference. We've seen these parents say they want data or a better understanding of where their child is academically this fall, and we tested some messaging around the importance of a fall benchmark. The 4 key themes that we tested were the need to inform teachers and parents on how to support students, the fact that retention might not have been as high for spring content as it would be typically, the lack of new material covered, and that included a statistic that only 12% of teachers say they taught new material in the spring. And then the idea of unfinished learning, that some students may have made more progress than others during remote learning. All 4 of those messages tested pretty well, but the 2 that really resonated the most were informing teachers and parents for targeted instruction and better support, which is really a positive message. It focuses on what can actually come out of the testing. And the second most convincing theme was the idea of retention, the fact that kids often lose some academic skills over the summer, but they might lose more this year. We also have over half of parents agreeing that it's important for students to take a statewide test in the spring to make sure they're meeting expectations in reading and in math. African American and Hispanic parents are significantly more likely to agree with this. One thing to note here is that language about the test is somewhat vague. So it just says a statewide test. It doesn't ask about a specific New Jersey state standardized test. So while we see support for having some sort of state test to make sure students are meeting expectations, that doesn't necessarily mean that there would be the same support for those specific state tests. And in the survey, we shared this description on the left of a potential tool to help with parent-teacher communication and collaboration. That description reads, a tool to develop a personalized plan for students for the upcoming school year. The tool uses input from the parent, teacher, and student on academic and personal goals, and input from the student's recent academic performance to develop this personalized plan. Overwhelmingly, parents reported that a tool like this would be helpful across grade levels, and parents of color are especially interested in it. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Erica now to give you some more information about this tool.
Thanks, Lydia. So the tool that you can see a screenshot of on this slide, this is actually a tool that the Learning Heroes team created as a result of the findings from the national research that we did back in the spring. And as Lydia mentioned, we tested it in the survey that we did with New Jersey parents, and we made some customizations to make it more specific to New Jersey. But just to give you guys a really quick overview, it's a pretty simple tool. We call it the Parent-Teacher Planning Tool. And you can see in the screenshot, it really has 3 simple steps. The first step is really it's meant to focus on the student's academic progress and performance. And that's a place where teachers can use this form to fill in information about how the student performed on the beginning of year benchmark test. The second part of the tool is really an opportunity for parents and students, those that are older in middle school, to give their feedback and their observations about how they did during remote learning, especially in terms of how it related to their social and emotional learning, what challenged them, what was a big success, how did they best learn during that time. And then the third part of the plan is really bringing all of that together and bringing the parent and the teacher together to develop a plan based on the student's academics, both the benchmark test and the teacher observations, as well as the feedback on the student's social and emotional learning. And the plan is really meant to help parents better support learning at home. And it really includes strategies and resources that parents can use to support their students learning at home throughout the school year. And it's meant to be a standalone tool, but it is 100% customizable. You can see on this slide, if districts chose to adopt this, they could really customize the introduction, the logos and the branding so that it reflected their own district, as well as sort of where this tool lives. You can sort of notice on the screen that it's an electronic version. So you can see like those light blue text boxes, which means that it can be filled out on the computer. So it could be emailed between parents and teachers, but it also could be printed and filled out by hand. But one of the things that we heard from teachers is that it would be great to have this tool accessible through the school or district's portal. So that's another option that districts can explore, how to embed that in the portal so that it's really easily accessible by parents and teachers. And before I go into the recommendations and next steps, I would love to stop and see if there are any questions just in terms of the research. I know it was a lot of data and a lot of information that was covered. So are there any questions? And you can, again, feel free to either unmute yourself or just type it right into the chat box. Okay. I will keep going, but again, we will have extra time at the end in case there are more questions. So all this information that was just thrown at you, what does this mean? So first and foremost, it's really an opportunity to leverage what I think of as the COVID era parent. We heard from the slides that Adam and Lydia presented that parents are going to show up differently this fall, and they likely already are because we're already in October. We know that they want to build stronger relationships with teachers and with their school. So this is really an opportunity for advocates to really help make that happen. So it's important to consider using multiple channels, multiple messengers to really help better equip schools and parents themselves to make that connection and build the relationship. And Lydia, just I think the last 2 slides that were discussed, she mentions this support that parents voiced in the survey for assessments. So again, it's really an opportunity. If students in the district are taking a beginning of year assessment, it's important to really frame that as an informative tool to really measure what I think of as the student's starting point at the beginning of the year, And by doing this, it also helps to set parents up for some sort of assessment at the end of the year. We found that they really see this idea of measuring the starting point in the beginning of the year, as well as measuring student learning at the end of the year to see how much progress they've made over time. And this is really, in a bigger picture, it's just a really great opportunity to help parents understand and value the data that their student receives about their learning throughout the school year. And then another opportunity is really to close the disconnect. We know that parents, again, are going to show up differently in the fall. We saw that they are hungry for better resources. They like the description of the tool. They are looking for more tools at their fingertips to help support learning. And they also said that they wanted to get a better understanding of where their child is, what their child is expected to learn. So as advocates, this is a great time to really advocate for schools and districts to use the parent-teacher communications tool and to really share beginning of year benchmark assessment results with parents, which haven't traditionally been shared with them in the past. Adam and Lydia also talked about this fact that parents, they have different expectations for the fall versus the spring. There was sort of this grace period in the fall where everyone was just doing the best that they could to get by, including teachers and schools. But that is all, it's all changed for the fall. So parents are expecting schools to have a more organized and structured plan in place, whether that's for remote learning, hybrid learning, or hopefully at some point this year, in-person learning. But again, as advocates, it's important to really make sure that parents know where to go when they have questions about how to support their child's learning. We know that parents want all of these resources and they want to be able to better explain and better understand what their child's supposed to learn, and schools don't always meet them where they are with that. So make sure that the schools are doing the best that they can, but also make sure that parents are connected to the resources and they know where to go and who to ask to find that information. And the last implication, which isn't directly related to academics, but it's something that Adam mentioned at the top of this presentation, and it's just imperative to always keep this in mind. So Adam mentioned safety is top of mind for parents. Even for those students who are using remote learning models or hybrid learning models now, we have to make sure that before we talk to them about academics, all of their questions about safety are answered and that their concerns are really addressed. Because in this moment in time, even if their child is not yet learning in person, what's top of mind for parents is what is coming next. So at some point in time, every school will have to open their door, literally, and kids will have to go back to learning. So parents really need to have all of those concerns addressed. And if we as advocates don't do that, it can really be seen as tone deaf. So that's just an important point to keep in mind. So those were the implications. So in terms of what you can do for next steps, there are a couple of things. First and foremost, just sharing this information as well as the parent-teacher planning tool more broadly with the parents and the other educators in your schools and district is a great place to start. Also sharing the tool and seeing if your school or district would like to use a customized version, we can help with that. As I mentioned earlier when I walked through that slide, there are different customizations that can be done. We can customize it for a specific benchmark test. We can update the branding, logo, all of those things. It's also, again, a great idea to talk to your district about how the tool can be embedded into the portal or the learning platform that's being used so that it can be sent between parents and teachers securely. And then also just sharing any additional feedback on this information that you learn, but also how you can use this and how you are using this to support parents will be helpful. And I'm going to call on Rose for this because I know New Jersey PTA is going to be doing a lot with actually putting this research into action. So Rose, anything you would like to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Erica. So we know this was a lot of information, great information, but you know, as New Jersey PTA is out speaking to our parents, our president, Kathy Lindenbaum, sits on a lot of groups that, as we're talking about the reopening and as we move forward. The one thing that we hear over and over is that parents want, well, I will have to say, I'll back up, next to the safety piece, obviously, they want their children back in a safe environment. But the other thing is that they want tools, resources, support to help advocate for better partnerships with, their teachers. And we feel that this tool that was talked about today is the perfect resource for that. So we're excited. We're excited that it's a tool that we can customize on the state level, and not just that, but on the district level also. So the next couple of weeks, we're excited that we'll have more webinars customized to your audiences. So be on the lookout for that, so that we can take this great data that's been put together, and that's truly the voice of all parents, and again, make it work for your school district and enforce that partnership for the parents and the school. So again, look for that information, and New Jersey PTA will be sending out information.
Great, thank you so much, Rose. And with that wraps up our presentation. But again, I would love to open it up to either questions as well as just initial feedback. Was there anything that surprised you? Is it sort of what did the data show what you thought it would show? Just love to hear from you all. All right, great. Well, if there are no more questions, there is a link that I'm going to copy and paste into the chat box. So if everyone could just take a look at that, there's a link there. If you wouldn't mind giving us your feedback, it would be greatly appreciated. And as Rose said, you can keep a lookout for more information coming from New Jersey PTA. All of this information, including the deck, as well as the tool, which will be available in both English and Spanish, which I forgot to mention earlier. Those will all be available on a Customized Learning Heroes page, as well as the We Raise New Jersey page. So you can access and find all of this material there. So feel free to take a look at this again, spend some time with it, and you are more than welcome to follow up with us if you have any questions either about the tool or any of the data that we presented today. Mary, is there anything else before we wrap up? All right, so then I think we are good. So I would just like to thank Adam and Lydia and the team at EDGE for taking the time and doing such great work with this data. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.